Like we do every week, time for a little different game or more of the same. So we're going to look at a few units from this past week in the NFL, some that had really, really great performances, some that were not so great, and see if that'll push forward or not in week 15. Starting with the Cleveland Browns, who in start number 2 for Joe Flacco, things were looking pretty darn good. He threw for over 300 yards. They put up 31 points against the Jags, 1 for 1 in their lone red zone attempt, scored a touchdown, 3 for 3 on fourth down conversions as well. Different game or more of the same, Michael, as they go up against a Bears defense that's been much improved.
Well, I think the one thing we have to take into account, the Browns defense has not played as well over the last month that we saw them earlier in the season. And a lot of that is injury, right? Myles Garrett's healthier, but their team, they're losing players. They haven't had Denzel Ward on the field. They're just not the same. So, and then offensively, they've lost 3 offensive linemen. Whether Posick plays or not, their starting center. If he doesn't, they'll have 3 backups in their offensive line, which I think is problematic against a good Bears team that's playing with some confidence. No weather in Cleveland. I would be surprised if we get more of the same. Dee Ford's hurt too. I just think this limits the Browns' offense, and everybody's going to come out of the game saying, well, Flacco, he's reverted back to his old time. I think a lot of it is because they're losing so many players. Their injury report this week was so bad, and it's got guys all over the starters that they can't get back on the field.
Yeah, we talk about weather and injury reports every single week. The Browns currently at 8-5 are sitting in that 5 spot in the AFC playoff picture. Remaining games, they host Chicago this week, at Houston next week, Jets, and at Cincinnati. So there are winnable games, but like we've talked about a lot this week, you can't pencil in anything anymore. So going to have to play their best moving forward. Spread in this game coming up, Browns laying 3 against the Bears, total 37.5. How about the Vikings defense? As we talk about the Raiders a lot coming up tonight on Thursday Night Football, shut out the Raiders this past week, a 3-0 game, which I just still cannot get over. They forced 3 turnovers. They forced 3 turnovers, though. Got to the quarterback a number of times. They are getting 3 in Cincinnati this week. So different game or more of the same for this Vikings defense against Jake Browning, who's been unbelievable for the Bengals last 2 weeks.
We're going to get more of the same. We've had more of the same, really, since week 5 when they played Kansas City. Kansas City moved the ball through the passing game on them and won that game 27-20. Remember, this Minnesota team, they have a chance to beat the Chargers. They throw the interception in the end zone. They lose the opener to Tampa Bay because they turned the ball over 3 times in that game. Okay, so this is a team that, even though in spite of the injuries, could be really a 9-win team if they would have taken care of some red zone turnovers that they didn't early in the season. This defense, from the first 3 weeks of the season, has greatly improved, and it keeps improving. It's impossible to run the ball. Well, not that the Bengals want to run the ball, but they're playing really well. They're attacking the pocket. They're blitzing. They cause problems for the opponent. I think you'll get more of the same here.
Michael, can I get 2 more wins out of this Minnesota team? They are at Cincinnati, obviously, this week. They have a home and home against Detroit, and they host Green Bay. Can the Vikings get 2 more wins?
Well, you got to feel like that last Detroit game might not mean anything, especially Detroit going on the road. And, Detroit's had a bunch of injuries, so you got to feel like Detroit's not going to be playing for a seeding. I don't think Detroit's going to catch San Francisco or they're going to catch Dallas or Philly, right? So forget that. So Detroit's going to be a 4 seed, can't improve their position, count that as a win. Can you get one more win? Can I hear for one more win out of the next 3? I think you can. Look, I think a lot of it's going to come down to Nick Mullen, right? Can Nick Mullen do anything well, right? I think Kevin O'Connor will game plan it. I think Kevin O'Connor will give him a lot of easy throws. He'll make it so that he's comfortable within the offense. He's just got to be able to execute and be on target. That's been his concern. I mean, last week he threw 13 passes, 4 of them were off target. They were so off target that the Raiders couldn't intercept them.
Also, a good reminder for that game. Looks like Justin Jefferson is going to go despite having to be hospitalized this past week, checking for internal injuries. He looks to have avoided significant injury, which is great. Unfortunate to see his first game back after being on injured reserve cut so short, but he is back in the fold, so Nick Mullins will have his top weapon. But as we know, that preseason win total for the Vikings was 8.5. They are sitting at 7 wins. Your girl needs 2 more. Let's look at a couple more things here. How about
there's a bunch of teams that they can. There's some teams that can get their over totals and under totals. Yeah, this is a big week.
There's a lot in the balance coming up here soon for season win totals. I'm still holding out hope for the Steelers, although prayers up for your girl on that one as well. How about the Eagles offense though this week, Michael? They moved the ball, but could not get into the end zone this past week. Well, their defense did. They did have a defensive touchdown, but it was all Jake Elliott in terms of the other points scored in this one. They turned the ball over 3 times, 0 in the red zone. Different game or more of the same in Seattle this week, laying 4?
I think we'll get a little different game. I think we'll see them try to run the ball more. You can attack Seattle on the ground, and I don't think Seattle's a very good defense. Clearly, Pete's complaining about the defense. You know, he called out players specifically, said that we're just not playing good enough on defense, and he's true. You know, they're 27th in points allowed. They're 28th in yards. They're 31st in first downs allowed. I mean, they can't stop you in terms of in any area, whether it's run or pass. So I think this Eagle offense will turn around. And the most important factor of the Eagle offense is to play from in front, so they can continue into their play-action passing game. That's what they need. When they're in a drop-back pass game, they're not as effective. Seattle sets up perfectly for them. Now, they've got to stop Seattle. That's going to be critical. Seattle can score points. We saw them score 35 against the Cowboys. So they can score points. But for me, I think the key component is they've got to play from in front. And against the Seattle defense that is not very good in run or pass, they should.
Yeah, and I don't know if you'll agree with this, but I think this week for Philadelphia is extremely important in terms of confidence because of the way the last couple of weeks have gone, and they have been like just beaten and battered and spent a lot of time on the field for that defense. This is an important week for them, especially on that side of the ball, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree. And Stormy, the other thing is too, why did Pete Carroll call his team out, right? Because he's on a 4-game losing streak. Remember, and they were they should have beat the Rams. They lost that. They only gave up 267 to the Rams. Next week, they give up 377. They increase 110 yards in terms of how many yards they give up. Then the next week against the Cowboys, they're up to 411. And then last week against your 49ers, they gave up 527. So they're trending in the worst possible direction against a team that needs to continue that trend.
One more here. We talked about the Lions a little bit and, you know, what they might do the final week of the season. But how about this week? Because coming off of a game against the Bears where it looked like that Lions defense, not only in that game, but a few weeks now, starting to revert back to that defense of last year. Allowed 336 total yards, 28 points, did not force a turnover, gave the Bears 20 first downs. Honestly, this Lions team should have been swept by the Bears this season. If you remember that earlier season game when they had a significant lead late and then let the Lions come back. But different game or more of the same for that Lions defense this week against the Broncos?
More of the same. And look, here's what's going to change the game a little bit, right? So when Sean Payton knows he can't run the ball like he did against Minnesota, he will throw it. The most passing attempts that Russell Wilson's had all year was 38 against the Miami Dolphins when they got behind. The second most was the Chargers at 37, with the Vikings at 37. He needed to throw the ball to win. And so he will. Wilson's is 200 yards per game is the lowest in his career, right? But he's going to have to throw it to win this game. The opponents throw the ball 58% of the time against Detroit. They know they need to do it. And Detroit, over the last 5 games, have given up 29.8 points per game. Think about that now. They've given up almost 30 points per game, and they've scored 28 per game. So they're trending in the wrong direction too.
This Broncos team on the outside looking into the playoff picture right now, sitting at 7-6, but they've won 6 of their last 7 games now, are at Detroit. Then they get New England, the Chargers, and the Raiders to close out the season. Michael, this team is going to be a playoff team.
I think they are. And here's the thing I think you have to. We make this mistake with the Broncos. That game against Miami was such an albatross. It was such an outlier that those numbers get put into the stats. And then they tend to look worse than they really are.
Yep, that was an anomaly. That was a different team as well than the one that we're seeing right now down the stretch of the season. Okay, we talked about different game, more of the same. Last week, the Dogs had their best games of the season, 11-4 ATS, 8-7 Dogs winning straight up. Will that trend ultimately bleed into tonight, or will a motivated Raiders team handle business against a backup quarterback? We shall see.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.